It's called the XLab, and the only place you'll find it is here at Suffolk University's Sawyer Business School. Hello and welcome to the On-Ramp, an ongoing series that highlights thought leadership from the Sawyer Business School in downtown Boston. My name is Peyton Garrity, and today I'll be speaking with marketing professor Müjde Yuksel. She's going to tell us all about the XLab, which gives students and faculty the opportunity to study neuromarketing and human behavior. Professor Yuksel, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
First off, what is the XLab?
So the XLab is a research facility where we integrated physiological technologies in doing research with consumers. So those physiological technologies, what we have in our lab are eye tracking, then we have facial expression analysis. We also have galvanic skin response, which measures consumers' arousal levels. We also just integrated an EEG device where we can collect some cognitive aspects going behind the scenes when our consumers meet with marketing stimuli.
And what makes the XLab so unique?
So the XLab is unique in the New England area. There are, of course, like research facilities with these kind of physiological measures throughout in other universities as well. But what we have done is actually integrate this lab in our curriculum, where we actually teach students how to use these kind of measures and data in market research. So in that regard, we are the first university, we are the first business school to do so in the New England area.
What inspired you to establish the XLab?
Yeah, it is. I was actually like, this was way early, like 10 years ago even, that the first time I was teaching a marketing research class, and it was interesting to see, like, all throughout different classes, we always work with consumers' self-reported data or their behavioral data in terms of what they do digitally, right? We collect those kind of data. But there are certain aspects that we cannot readily remember or correctly identify when we are experiencing things. So I was looking around different research technologies, and actually here, right in Boston, downtown Boston, we have iMotions, which is a good vendor for these kind of technologies. And I actually invited them just to showcase it in my class. And my students loved it, loved the showcase. And it was so interesting to see something other than just self-reported measures. So from that day on, I was always looking for ways to integrate this within our educational efforts. So I think like that was my first motivation to see that spark in my students' experience.
That's awesome. And why is it important to use this data for research?
It is important in a way to complement what we already know, right? So we can actually detect like certain behaviors. Then we want to know why they act in those certain manners. And in order to be able to find that out, then we usually survey consumers or have them in focus groups or talk to them in in-depth interviews. But again, as I said earlier, it is very difficult for consumers to remember the things as they happen after they consume things. So there's always that little bias in our answers. But also in certain answers, we have some social desirability bias that in a way we answer those questions to look good. So I think like these kind of measures actually get the more accurate aspects of our experiences.
Are there opportunities for students to get involved in the XLab?
Yes, definitely. There are many ways that they can get involved. First of all, like I teach a neuromarketing course. So the students, this is a graduate class, but for these grad students, they learn the ins and outs of these kind of technologies and how to use them, how to collect data around them, and how to analyze them as well. But we also have lab assistants. Every year we have about 6 student lab assistant, undergrad and graduate students, and I actually train them myself on the technologies, but also we train them on like how to manage a lab, how to deal with our participants in an ethical manner. So they then do so many hands-on tasks within the XLab. They do the showcases. I try to give them as much responsibility as possible, basically, with the technology. But in addition to that, we also run studies, commercial and academic studies, and also my students run their own studies from the class. So then we invite our students to participate in the studies so they can also get involved and experience these technologies as a study participant. Yes. So yeah, there are many different ways to get involved.
How can the XLab benefit businesses?
So we actually, as a university, do lots of client projects for our businesses, and this is in a way to complement their efforts of creating and crafting meaningful experiences for their customers. So in order to be able to do that, of course, they need to know what works in a way that does not cause friction in the customer's experiences. So there are many different ways that we do research, but like it could be a website, it could be a packaging, it could be about an ad, whether it creates excitement versus not. So there are many ways that we can actually craft studies for them. And of course, they would need to book because we don't have much space in our projects, but we talk with them and cater it specifically based on what their needs and interests are.
What are some examples of businesses that might use this kind of research?
So for instance, what we have done so far, we have done a couple projects for Cold Snap, which is an interesting ice cream machine that is like a Keurig of ice creams.
Oh, wow.
Yes, and it's very sustainable too, because you don't have to freeze the pods. Basically, you can use them and it makes the ice cream, like cold ice cream, at the end. But of course, like this is a new concept, and we wanted to see, for instance, how consumers react to their pods, because it's canina ice cream, so it's a novel concept. So we did a packaging study for them, like when they encountered the packaging, we did they had 2 different designs, an old design and a new design, so we did like A/B testing on which performs better. And we collected some eye tracking measures, also like GSR levels, whether they were aroused with that idea. And they were also confused with that idea too, ice cream in a can. But it was a very interesting and fun study for us, and they also loved our findings and insights that we are still continuing to do studies for them.
How does the lab address potential ethical concerns?
There are like lots of measures that we put in place. First of all, for instance, each lab assistant needs to be trained in working with human subjects. Subjects meaning our participants. So we have a certain consent form that we establish for each of our studies. So of course, like we don't do any studies without consent. But we also, like in addition to the lab assistants being trained, for instance, I teach in my class for the marketers to use these kind of technologies in an ethical way as well. So of course, with every technology, you can use it in a more manipulating manner versus in a way that you can actually create better experiences, like better products and services that your consumers can actually enjoy. So I teach, and I believe in the second one, because then if you do it in a more manipulating and tricking manner, then it is a short-term transaction and nobody will be happy at the end, because as a marketer you need to create a long-term relationship with your consumer. Otherwise you are not a good marketer.
What does the future look like for the XLab? Are there any new technologies or methodologies you're planning to integrate?
So we have just recently integrated the EEG, so we're very excited about that, because in addition to like the emotions that we see from the face or the arousal measures that we get from the galvanic skin response, that what we call the GSR, and where they focus on the screen, now we are able to measure more cognitive responses, meaning we can get like more their attention, whether they are interested or not. So it will be it will add an interesting layer to our already fun studies. But we are also interested in, there is a new technology around voice analysis.
Oh, wow.
So we are thinking to integrate that in the future too. And from a capacity perspective, because currently we only have one data collecting station, so the studies that we run are very limited in numbers because of that in a given semester. So we want to increase the number of our hardware, basically, to be able to run multiple studies in a shorter period of time.
Wow, that sounds like an amazing future for the XLab. Professor Yuksel, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time on the On-Ramp.